Welcome to the Build Propulsion Lab, live from DPE Summit 2024, where today I will be talking to Phil Webb from the Spring Boot
Hello.
team. So one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, I'm going to change it to this camera. One of the things I wanted to talk to you about was how the Spring team, or certainly you individually, uses Velocity with the Spring, because I quite often use the Spring Velocity instance that we provided very kindly for you for free to have a look at like the patterns of things like. I'm particularly interested in flaky tests.
Right.
So I kind of wanted to talk to you about like how do you use Velocity when it comes to things like flaky tests or looking at build times and so on.
Where to begin? I guess I think the initial thing that kind of attracted us to Velocity was the caching capabilities and the fact that the build times that we have were quite slow, and we were able to increase them quite significantly when we adopted it. And I thought that would be like the killer feature. I thought that would be the thing that we wanted to really have the product for. But it kind of just goes away, and you kind of just assume that your build is going to be a certain speed. And the killer feature actually turned out to be more the kind of data that you get with the product. So for us in the Spring Boot team and the wider Spring team, Spring Boot brings like a lot of projects together. So we're like the integration point for a lot of Spring projects, Spring Security, Spring Data, and we're a team that's like globally distributed. And one of the surprising kind of killer features with it was, it's going to sound stupid, but just having URLs, like being able to like copy a URL and paste it somewhere in a chat room and say, hey, this thing that you've just changed broke in this way, and have someone just kind of look at the data and dig into it. And that was kind of unexpected, because I kind of thought you could do that already with CI, but it really does make a difference being able to kind of point at something very specific in one specific build.
Sorry, I was going to stop
Yeah,
you.
go on.
No, I really love you saying that. So I think that it's almost like I prepped you to say that, because our sales folks are really keen on selling Velocity from an acceleration point of view, and it's an easy story to tell, to say, get your build speeds down by 50% or even down to like 20% of what it was.
Yeah.
But when I'm doing training and advocacy around Velocity, we also talk about the observability and the troubleshooting.
Yeah.
And so I'm really pleased to hear you say that, because when I'm trying to teach the troubleshooting, I say, you get a URL which you can share with other people, and it sounds so insanely stupidly easy.
Yeah.
So you find that really helpful then?
Yeah, very much. And then the additional thing is the history that you get, which you just do not get with like CI systems. You might be able to like go, look at this log here on this particular build, and if it's still available, you're lucky. But you don't get like a historical perspective of like, oh, this test is failing. Did that fail before? And you just can't kind of get that information without a tool that has kind of deeper knowledge of the build itself. So the other kind of great feature that we use like a lot is flaky test detection. And just being able to like look at something and go, oh, did this, has this happened before? And then give us a way of kind of targeting tests and trying to fix them, because we have like a lot of integration tests. So we spin up Docker containers, then we trying to get the confidence with our software to know that it's actually working. But that is, it's a kind of art form rather than science. You've got to wait for the container to come up. It's on infrastructure that you don't control. You don't know how much memory it's going to get. You don't know how long it's going to take to start. So sometimes just things like tweaking a timeout, waiting 2 minutes rather than 1 minute is enough to kind of fix a flaky test. And without that historical perspective, you just don't know, is this a one-off or is it a pattern?
Yeah, I love looking at the Spring data, particularly for the flaky tests. Like before this video, you said, oh, we have a lot of flaky tests. But one of the reasons why I really like using the Spring stuff is I think it's very indicative of a good quality code base with a whole bunch of tests, and I think you have the right amount of flaky tests. I mean, you don't really want any, but in terms of, I think a lot of other organizations could look at that data and go, oh, that looks a bit like me, like my organization. And particularly the fact, like you said, it's a lot of the integration tests and the end-to-end tests which are failing. So I think that the problems that you have are not unusual for lots of other organizations. So I'm kind of interested in hearing, apart from maybe timeouts, like what other things are you looking at to try and reduce the flakiness of your tests?
That's a difficult question. Okay. We've had some of the more interesting ones are things that either fail only on CI, they're very frustrating, or things that only fail when you do like a full build, that they're also kind of hard to track down. And often, again, just having that history is very useful because you can't always reproduce the problem, so you can't just fix it. Like you can't run this one test and go, oh, that's the problem, let me fix it. You kind of have to try something, like turn a knob a little bit, tweak a little, screw something a little bit tighter, and then wait for a week or so to see if it actually made a difference. So that's kind of one of the more beneficial aspects, I think, of having that history. But in terms of the fixes, I'm trying to think of some good examples. We've definitely had like threading issues. We've had like some common ones are like pollution caused by one test that's causing problems with another. So we have in our tests we have the ability to annotate certain tests so that they start in a dedicated class loader. So occasionally it's like, oh, this thing's going wrong. If we start it in its own class loader so it doesn't pollute stuff, then that's going to fix the problem. So being able to kind of switch those on, watch it, no, we didn't fix it, take it off, or what have you.
I think that it's really interesting that you say about the observability and the patterns and things, particularly for things like flaky tests, because as you say, like if you can't reproduce the problem or if it's only in one particular environment, what you want to look at is, when and where and how did it start getting worse or did it get introduced? And I'm kind of interested in what you said earlier on as well, that you kind of assume that CI will give you that kind of information, but it's not really true, right? Because from Develocity, you see, for this test method, it normally passes except for this time.
Yeah.
I wonder what happened then.
Yeah.
And it can help with things, particularly with flaky tests, but
yes,
anything like that.
Especially with, we've recently switched our CI to GitHub Actions, and we used to have kind of an in-house CI system that if we wanted to, we could actually sort of get into the container. Like if you were quick enough, you could like jump into the container and dig around
Have
and
a
sort
look.
of. I think there are ways of doing it, but it's not, and wait for the results, and that's very difficult without something that has kind of deep insight into your build. And I don't think GitHub could ever offer anything like that because it's trying to be, a general purpose CI solution for whatever language, whatever. Develocity really gives you deep insight because of its integration with the build system you're using. So it understands Java tests, it's able to list them, it's able to kind of print stack traces that are useful. Whereas a CI system can't really do that without being too specific to one technology, which it won't want to do.
I'm going to put you a little bit on the spot here, and it's a question that I didn't expect to ask either. But given that you are using Develocity like in the from it, is there anything that you would like to see in Develocity that it doesn't currently do, or that perhaps either we haven't thought of or you haven't discovered yet?
Yeah, the one thing that is sometimes a frustration and sometimes a benefit is it's very easy to kind of plug it into CI, but we also have our local builds producing build scans. And occasionally we've been tripped up because we might be fixing a security issue, so we might have like a branch called, fix nasty security issue, and we accidentally go publish build scans. Because our instance is open, you very kindly, give it away. You can demo-dentally can publish, not the code itself, but enough that might give someone a hint. So I'd really like to see the ability to kind of lock down certain scans logged in if you want to see like builds that happened on a private machine. That's about the only thing that I think I've really missed with it. And I think for most enterprises, it's not a problem because they do. have to put all their build scans on the internet.
No, exactly. I mean, their enterprise stuff, they're all on-prem and stuff, and it's
Yeah.
all and fairly recently we introduced more granular security, so that you can, these can only see these projects and so on.
Yeah.
But I think it's a fair point, because sometimes when I'm poking through the Twitter, and I kind of know who a lot of you are, but I'm like, oh, Stefan did this, Phil did this, and I'm like, oh, I feel a little bit like I'm spying on them. But it's also kind of helpful to be able to see those local builds, right? Because you can see,
very much.
obviously you can see what you're working on, but like oh, like the spring, I look at the spring data ones a lot because MongoDB